Gauragraganya Ganagota Goloduharam Gauranga Gurutama Gopyada Kopa Briksham Gopala Gada Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshikavaram Satatam Namami Uttama Adama Kichuna Bachira Jachiya Kola Kahe Premananda Hemona Gauranga Hridoya Dariya Bola Bhaja Gauranga Kaha Gauranga Laha Gaurangera Namare Jai Jana Gauranga Bhaje Se Hoyamara Pranare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yashaiva Padambuja Bhakti Labhya, Prema-bhakti-candrika Padama Pumata. Tasmai Jagannangala Mangalaya Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Chaitanya Chandraya Namo Namaste Madhgavirapi Gopala Sri Kriyat Kripaya Jari Tadaiva Sambhaya Pitvaha Rishayustat Priya Janaha Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Sasanatana Rupaka Gopala Raghunatha Brajabala Bapahimam Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Brinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Krishna Nama Amrita Vaishi Bhakta Chandra Prabhadvasta Tamo Baraya Gauranga Deva Anucharaya Namo Namah Shri Narotamaya. Again and again I offer my obeisances unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. He is indeed a true follower of Lord Gauranga Deva. The nectarian shower of the holy name of Krishna radiating from the moon of his mouth destroys the darkness of ignorance. So we're going to continue with our discussion. This is we're on the fifth song of Prema-bhakti-candrika, which is called Raganuga Bhakti Riti, or a glimpse into the path of loving attachment. And this is our sixth subsection about Siddha-pranali and Nam-kirtan. And it's a topic I think I'm going to continue at least one more session after this, maybe two. I consider it very, very important for devotees in our line. There's so many misconceptions. And as we've said oftentimes in some of our past sessions, some devotees may not be so aware of the controversy around this thing, but there's a lot. So anyway, we're on the eighth stanza of that song, which is a stanza which a lot of our friends of the Babaji's line, they cite to substantiate that Siddha-pranali is everything. And we don't argue the Siddha-pranali is valid. Siddha-pranali is important, but it's not that the system of Ekadas Bhav, or an initiation into an understanding of 11 different aspects of their eternal nature, which was something Bhaktivinoda Thakur got, and many other Gaudiya Vaishnavas. We don't consider that to be absolutely necessary. And we've been discussing about the holy name and what do our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acaryas say. And now in the last session, we spoke something about from the Yoga Sutras and a little more philosophical. It's a great science. And somebody asked me after the last session, well, gosh, do we really need to have all this philosophy and things? It's not necessary. All that's necessary is just chant Hare Krishna with full enthusiasm and full faith. But the problem is we don't have full faith in that chanting of Hare Krishna. We have other problems. So why don't we have that faith? And what does it mean? So we're discussing that. So let's look again at this verse. Yugala charana sevi nirantada e bhavi anuragi taki basudoi. Sadane bhaviba jahat siddha-dehe phabataha raga patira e se upai. I will constantly desire to serve the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna with loving attachment. Whatever I contemplate during the practice of devotional service will certainly be achieved upon perfection in a spiritual body. This is a method on the path of attachment. So this phrase, again, sadhane bhaviba jaha siddha dehe pabataha raga patiras se upai. This is raga patiras se upai. This is the path of raga nuga bhakti, the path of attachment. Sadhana bhaviba jaha, whatever it is that we're contemplating with attachment, jaha siddha dehe pabataha, we'll get that thing. So this is one of the main pramanas that some of our friends, and we do have friends in that line, I'm not just saying it in a facetious way or a sarcastic way, but this is one of the main pramanas that some of them cite to establish that this is the only process. It's a rather weak peg, a weak notch to hang your coat on, and hang your coat of intolerance upon. So we've been speaking in our last sessions what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and Bhaktivinoda Thakur had to say about this subject matter, and how the holy name is everything. And this is what our acharyas, which our Goswamis, stress over and over and over again. Probably, I think the best thing will be to have a session again at the end of all this, where we try to summarize all of the different subjects about this Siddha-pranali thing and go through it all again, because there's so many. It is a very subtle thing, and it's very scientific, and we're doing this quite consciously on purpose, because this is our life. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he commented that, he said, Gorkishwaras Babaji said that our Siddha-pranali mantra is Trinada Pisa Nichena. And our Siddha-pranali process is through the mercy of Guru and through the mercy of the holy name. And we heard how Bhaktivinoda Thakur, who had Siddha-pranali again, in Jaiva Dharma speaks about two different paths, the Bahiranta Pata, the external path, and the Antaranga Pata, the internal path. And the external path is Siddha-pranali. The internal path is chanting the holy name. The problem is devotees on both sides of the fence. On the side, and these are our friends. Anybody who's a Gaudiya Vaishnava is our friend. Anybody who worships God is our friend. Whether they may be a Muslim or a Christian or whatever, they're our friends. And what to speak of someone who believes in Krishna and reads the Bhagavatam and things. But our friends, some of them have this conception that this is the only way. But I find personally, in discussions with both sides, that most of the devotees today, even at Radhakund, really don't have such a philosophical understanding. As I've commented a number of times, let me say it again. One of my friends has been living at Radhakund for over 40 years, a disciple of Jayapataka Maharaj, staunch ISKCON devotee, who does Govardhan Parikrama twice a day. He commented once to me that the average ISKCON Bhakta knows more Siddhanta than the average Babaji at Radhakund. Understand that. This is from somebody who's been living there and has seen this thing. They know more language, to be sure. and they know more culture and tradition, to be sure. But in terms of understanding Bhagavad Gita, Ishopanishad, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Nectar Devotion, Srimad Bhagavatam, your average ISKCON devotee understands more. So our system is the holy name. And our acharyas have stressed that again and again and again and again. We went through that. I'll again do a little synopsis of that, a little bit of review at the end. Let me just add another verse today on that subject matter, and then we'll review a little bit from our last session. Baladeva Bhushan has given a beautiful commentary on the Vishnu Sahasranam. And his commentary in text 88, he quotes this beautiful verse, which we've printed in our Bindu magazine, from the Adivaraha Purana. Yadi means if. Yadi vatadi doshena. Vata adi, vata means air. Dosha means some fault. Adi means beginning with it. There's some problem. Vatadi dosha, it means some sickness is there. Madbhakta mam na chasmate. And my devotee, Madbhakta, mam na chasmat, can't remember me. Now, this verse is very, very significant in our discussion because generally our Babaji friends, and I'm sorry, I don't like to put this like these are enemies and these are friends. It's a simplistic way to do it. I should be more careful and avoid that. But anyway, some persons, they say that smarana is everything. But again, as we commented before, it was, I think Jagadish Das Babaji, one very prominent Babaji, he once commented that smarana means marana, that remembrance means death, that you can't begin to remember Krishna until you're dead materially. So this verse is speaking about smarana, that maybe the devotee can't do smarana. Mad bhaktam mam na chasmit, but aham smarami mad bhaktam nayami paramam gatim. Krishna says personally, Baladeva Bhushan, who all Gaudiya Vaishnavas accept, says that if that devotee, due to some sickness, can't remember me, I'll remember him at the time of death. This is the glory of chanting the holy name. I think in our last session, perhaps it was that we spoke about 3 different types of prayer. I'm sorry, we missed a session last week. And let's just look at this real quick here. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And Rupa Goswami speaks about Samprarthanatmika, wholehearted prayer. Dainya Bodhika, expressions of humility in the Lasamoyi, where this is where someone in Rati has awakened. Vishnu Chakrabarti Thakur comments like this on this. So some prarthana prayers indicate, as we spoke in our last session, indicate saranagati. And that Krishna saranagata, that surrender to Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, is the svarupa lakshana, or primary quality of a devotee. And this Krishna Saranagata, which is the essence of Samprarthanatmika, we're giving prayers with our whole life and soul. That's the beginning of our spiritual life. So I don't want to. There's so many things. We've been going over a lot of things a little quickly. Let me just comment, though, that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, he's given a commentary in Bilvamangala Thakur's Krishna Karnamrita. And in the first verse, he comments that there's 2 methods of approach to Raganuga practice. One is in which the one of those processes is when one's spiritual identity is assigned. Someone awards and tells you this is you're this such and such manjari and that. And the second is when it's awakened at a spurti, at the stage of bhav, without any need for forced meditation. And we should understand that many Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Someone wrote to me recently and asked me who was the guru of my Guru Maharaj's family. And they don't really understand. They usually have some family guru, some kula guru in those villages. Guru Maharaj never spoke about that. To me, it was clear that it wasn't such an important thing to them. They're all in the line of Shyamananda Prabhu. And there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Vaishnavas in Orissa who are chanting Hare Krishna, and they have some understanding about Braj and about Radharani and about the gopis and the manjaris, and they're not even initiated at all. We don't recommend that. Initiation is the first thing that Rupa Goswami describes when he speaks about the 64 different angas of bhakti, which, to give a little bit of a hint to everybody who might have seen our thing in WhatsApp, my WhatsApp chat, this Bhakti Anga means that angas are the limbs of bhakti. And I will mention this. In Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami speaks about Lakshasha Anga Bhakti, or thousands, hundreds and thousands of different angas of bhakti, different practices of bhakti, which he says are described in Hari Bhakti Vilas. But then he goes on to say that I'm going to narrow those down to Chatu Shasti Bhakti, 64 different angas. And so then he speaks about 64 different practices of bhakti, which he comments the first 10 are the most important, beginning with accepting a spiritual master. Later, our acharyas have commented wholeheartedly that we practice Nava-vidhi Bhakti. We practice the ninefold practices of bhakti, which is about a 90% discount from Chaturshasti Bhakti. And that Nava-vidhi Bhakti means Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandhanam, Dashanam, Sakyam, Atmai Nivedanam. 9 processes of bhakti beginning with hearing and chanting. And then Mahaprabhu narrowed that down again to Panchanga Bhakti, Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Nam, Bhagavat Shravan, Mathura Bas, Srimutira Seva. 5 different practices which are essential. And then again in Chaitanya Bhagavat, he gives Bhaktir Angadvayam, or 2 processes, Anandata Hoye Sakrit Krishna Boli. He says, just don't criticize anyone and chant Hare Krishna. That's the essence of everything. So within all of these Lakshasha Anga Bhakti, or the Chaturshasti Bhakti, or the Nava-vidhi Bhakti, or the Panchanga Bhakti, or the Bhakti Angadvayam, we don't find any mention of Siddha-pranali. And these are again and again and again our acharyas describing what is the essence of bhakti. And it's not just in our Gaudiya line either. Both the Nimbarka and Vallabha Sampradayas are Ragmarg Sampradayas. Both of them have some conception of Radha and Krishna and Vrindavan, and they have some appreciation for Raganuga Bhakti. Neither one of those Sampradayas has any kind of initiation similar to Siddha-pranali Diksha. On the contrary, both of those sampradayas, devotees in those lines are expected that they're going to attain this Rag Marg through the perfection of their Diksha mantra. And Rupa Goswami also, he mentions in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he mentions Vallabhacharya's Pushti Marg after he speaks about what is defining Raganuga Bhakti. And he equates it with the Raganuga Bhakti of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So this is our line. And we were speaking all this again and again, so especially so we can just have some faith in this system. And I understand there's a lot of technical things, and maybe not everybody is going to understand or appreciate it. That's okay. But let's just have some understanding in general and have some faith in this. So let's look back now at the Yoga Sutras we were speaking about in our last session. In the first verse of Yoga Sutra, second verse of Yoga Sutra, describes Yogas Chitta Vritti Nirodha. That what is the meaning of yoga, and we have Bhakti Yoga also. We're not just talking about Hatha Yoga, but yoga means Chitta Vritti Nirodha, to control the mind, which is very much Vritti, it's going all over the place. And then we read from a commentary attributed to someone named Vyasadeva, not sure who that is, on the first verse of Patanjali Yoga, and he speaks about 5 different levels of the mind. I'm not going to go into that again. You can see it on the screen. You can listen to our last session. I would like to go back to that later on when we kind of tie everything together again. And anyway, we spoke about these five different levels. The final which Shipta, where the mind is disturbed, Mudha, the mind is in the mode of ignorance, Vikshipta, it's distracted, Ekagra, it's one-pointed, and the Rudha, where it's totally controlled and is totally absorbed. And we gave some different examples of each one of these. And a verse that I found very important from the Gaur-Govinda Swami Archana Padati, Gaur-Govinda Smarna Archana Padati by Jan Chandra Goswami, where he says, Mano Majeshito Mantra Mantra Majestitam Manaha Mano Mantra Samayutameta Di Japa Lakshanam. This is Japa Lakshanam. This is a characteristics of Japa. Mano Majestito Mantra, when the mind becomes completely absorbed in the mantra, Mantra Majestitam Manaha, and then the mantra becomes completely situated in the mind. Mano mantra samayuktam, how the mind and the mantra should be joined together. And this is the platform of Nirudha, which as Lila Purushottam Prabhu pointed out in our last session, the next verse in Yoga Sutras, which we'll come to a little bit to later, speaks about what is Siddha-pranali, what is Siddha-deha. This is Siddha-deha when we come to this point. So also in our last session, we gave some example about that Nirodha. From the third canto of the Bhagavatam, we spoke something about chitta, or consciousness. And we want to go further with that. Let's look at Srila Prabhupada's, the verse in Srila Prabhupada's purport. This is Kapila Dev, third canto of the Bhagavatam, chapter 26, text 14. I'm just going to go right to Srila Prabhupada's purport. The four internal senses or subtle senses described herein are defined by different characteristics. When pure consciousness is polluted by material contamination, and when identification with the body becomes prominent, one is said to be situated under false ego. Consciousness is a function of the soul, and therefore behind consciousness there's soul. Consciousness polluted by material contamination is called ahankara. So in the essence, what we're trying to say is that for Siddha-pranali, our Siddha-pranali system is Chanadapisa, to behave in a very humble way and chant the holy name under the guidance of Guru is our connection. We'll hear more specifically about that. And as we do that, our chitta becomes free from mundane consciousness, becomes free from ahankara or false ego. And as our consciousness becomes free from that ahankara, false ego, then we become qualified to understand what that thing is. Now, I'd like to turn now to a very scientific study from one of the great scientists in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. His name was Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and he wrote a very scientific treatise called Madhurya Kadambini. And we're looking now at the 8th chapter, the 13th verse, if you want to look that up some. He speaks about what is the meaning of the word ahankar. So Srila Prabhupada, that's his last word in the purport there. He says, consciousness polluted by material contamination is called ahankar. So we need to understand that ahankar and how to become free from that ahankar if we want to understand what is Siddha-pranali. The word ahankara is a compound word of two words together, ahamta and mamata. Ahamta means some self-identification. A conditioned soul has this aham. I'm this gross material body made out of Maya. I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm a Hungarian, I'm a Russian, I'm a Indian, I'm a whatever, male or female. We're identifying with that body and the result of our karmic activities. And the second aspect of conditioned life is mamata. I have these things. These things belong to me. This is my house. This is my car. It's my book. It's my shoes. It's my clothes. It's my family. And that when we become absorbed with aham, I am this gross material body, and mamata, these things belong to me. This is my husband, my wife. This is material consciousness, and this thing binds us up. Huh? So Jagadananda Pandit in Prema Vivarta, he's described this. I'm going to there's quite a few verses here. I'm going to flip through these, but this is very classic Gaudiya Vaishnava Siddhanta. Okay, and what he's describing here, this is from chapter 16 of Prema Vivarta, the first to the 13th verses. And again, we'll just go over them rather quickly. He's speaking about Chitkana, Jiva Krishna Chinmaya Bhaskara. That the Chitkana, or the living entity, the Jiva, is an infinitesimal part of Krishna. Nitya Krishna Deki Krishna Korena Adar. And when the living entities, when they realize that Krishna is eternal, Nitya Krishna Deki, when they see that, Krishna Korena Adar, then they begin to engage in Krishna's service. But on the other hand, when this ahankara is there, Krishna Bahirmukhahan Bhogavancha Kori, when they turn away from Krishna, Krishna Bahirmukha, and then they turn to try to enjoy some bogas, some sense gratification or illusion in this world, then immediately at that time, Nikata Mayatari Japati Adari, that potency of Maya, she's right there, Nikata, and she grabs a hold of that living entity. And she's just like being captured by a witch. Pisachi Paili Jina. Like someone becomes bewildered by a witch and they can't understand who they are. My Guru Maharaj told once, he said, there's a grandmother's story in Orissa that once there was a witch, and she was a very ugly witch. She was a very old witch. Maybe she was 200 or 300 years old. She didn't have any beauty, but she fell in love with a handsome prince. And so then this witch, she took the form of a beautiful woman, and she attracted that prince, and he came to her, and then she turned him into a goat. And that prince was thinking, I am a goat, and he was completely controlled by that witch. So Guru says, in the same way, we become the captive of this witch known as Maya. So when the living entity can understand, oh, Jai Gaur Prabhu making his comments is chapter 6. Thank you. I say 16, yes, chapter 6. So when the living entity understands, Ami Siddha Krishna Das Ekata Bhule, Mayara Nafara Hana Chiradina Bhule. When we forget that I'm Krishna's servant, when we don't understand that, then ahankara comes and we become the slave of Maya. And we go from one body to another body, and Kabu Raja, Kabu Praja, sometimes I'm a king, sometimes I'm a citizen, Kabu Vipra, sometimes I'm a Brahmin, Kabu Sudra, sometimes I'm a Sudra, sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're suffering. And he says, Kabu Swargi, Kabu Marte, sometimes I go to the heavenly planets, sometimes I'm in the hellish planets or on earth. Sometimes I become a demigod, sometimes I'm a master, sometimes I'm a servant. Now, all of that begins to change. And how does it change? And this is such a very, very important thing. Because this ahankara, again, ahankara means ahamta, self-identification, and mamata, possessiveness. When we shift the mamata, when we transfer the mamata, the possessiveness, this is my wife, my family, my country, my language, my culture. When we transfer that mamata to Guru and Krishna, then things begin to change. And this is described by Jagadananda Pandit in Prema Vivarta. This is where where things begin to shift. E rupa samsara brahmete kona jan sadhu sange nija tattva avagata hana. while we're transmigrating from one body to another because of this ahankara, this false ego, if by some good fortune, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagavan Jeev, we come in contact with some saintly person, sadhu sangha, then nija tattva avagatahan. We understand something. We hear some tattva, and we begin to understand our identity as a spirit soul, as a servant of Krishna. And things at that time begin to change. There's a course of development when our self-identification and possessiveness, our ahamta and mamata, is still very strong in a material sense. Then we're thinking, I'm in material life. But when we meet a devotee, what happens, we begin to think, oh, we can see that we're in material life. Before we couldn't even understand. One of what is the first stage in getting good health? The first stage in getting good health is to realize I'm sick. If you think I'm not sick, I'm perfect, powerful, happy, everything is good, then you ain't never going to get healed. But when you realize there's something wrong, I got to go to a doctor. I have to listen to the doctor. I have to do something. So when we come in contact with the sadhu, and the sadhu chastises us, as we spoke in our last session, because we have to surrender, but that surrender means to a person. And when that sadhu, and the very word sadhu means someone who cuts, and we read some beautiful statement from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta about that. When he cuts, by chastising us with harsh words, then we're forced to face reality, however unpleasant it may be. As Ravindra Sarup Prabhu once commented, he said that reality, no matter how depressing, is always preferable to illusion, no matter how cheerful. The illusion is. Illusion seems very, very cheerful. And reality is very, very depressing. I'd rather just live in Disneyland for the rest of my life. And everything's very, very nice. But you're never going to accomplish anything, and you're not going to understand who you are. So when we come in contact with the Vaishnava, our senses are still very strong. Our identification with the body and our possessiveness, our mamata toward material things is still very strong. But now we're starting to think, oh, I'm actually meant to serve the Lord. I should serve the Lord through Guru. When that good fortune arises, Brahmanda Brahmate Kon Bhagyavanji, he becomes Bhagyavan, becomes very, very fortunate. Then he becomes a little eligible to practice bhakti because he gets a little bit of a fragrance of spirituality. And then from that, he develops some faith, ado shraddha, tata sadhu sangha. Then he has some association with sadhus. From associating with sadhus, his shraddha, his faith becomes stronger. And he comes to the point, ado shraddha sadhu sangha tato bhajana kriya. He comes to the point of anishita bhajana kriya. This is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's beautiful explanation. At that point, then, he begins to do some bhajan, but that bhajan is anishtita. It's flickering. Sometimes he gets up at 2 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes he gets up at 6 o'clock. Once in a while, he gets up at 8 o'clock in the morning. And sometimes he's really fired up, and sometimes we're not so fired up. But still, he's starting Anishita Bhajana Kriya. And at that stage, the self-identification and possessiveness, this ahamta and mamata, become minimalized because they're in connection, just like Srila Prabhupada says, when you take an iron bar and put it in the fire, the iron bar becomes like the fire. So when we are in the fire of sadhu sangha in association with the devotees, then our ahamta and mamata become minimal, and we start to think, see, this is not me. I'm not this body. So going back to Prema-bhakti-candrika then, at that point then comes what my Guru Maharaj called Atma Krandana. And this is our Siddha-pranali mantra. Trinadapi Suniche. Now, at that point, we can become a little humble. Nija tattva jani ar sangsara chai kena va bhajina maya kori hoi hoi. We begin to cry. Because we have this more proper conception of ourselves, which is hammered in by Sadhu Guru. It's not just something I'm learning in the university. It's not just some information, but there's some wisdom, some realized wisdom there because I'm associating with a saint who has realization of it. And then when I get that information of who I am, Nija Tattva Jani, I understand that. Our samsara nachai, then I don't desire samsara anymore. And as we spoke in our previous session too, that Bhaktivinoda Thakur says and Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he says that the adhikar for Krishna Bhakti comes when we still have attachment to material things and we can't give it up. But this is the stage spoken about in this verse in Prema-bhakti-candrika. I understand who I am, and I'm not desiring that material entanglement anymore, but I'm crying because I'm still attached to it. Kende bole, oh hey Krishna, Amitabha Das. And I start calling out, hey Krishna, I'm your servant. Tomara Chodana Chadi, Hoilasarvanas, but I left your lotus feet, I left your service, and now Hoilasarvanas, everything is destroyed. Kripa Kori Krishna Tadi Chadana Sangsar Kakuti Kori Krishna Daki Ekabar. Krishna is so kind that if Krishna hears such a devotee crying for him, doing this Atma Krandana, then immediately Krishna will release that soul from material entanglement. This is Siddha-pranali in a natural way arising through bhav. Maya ke pichane raki Krishna pani chai bhajite Krishna pada padma pai. And so then when the jiva by Krishna's mercy breaks away from that witch, Maya, and Krishna pani chai strives to get Krishna to do service, then at that time, bhajite, worshiping Krishna, Krishna pada padma pai, he attains the supreme shelter of Krishna's lotus feet. That means Siddha-pranali. That means understanding your Siddha Deha. Krishna tadi dena nija chit shaktir bala, maya akarshana chadi hoya durbala. At that time, Krishna gives that living entity his strength, his chit shakti, his internal potency, by which that living entity understands who they are. And at that time, the spiritual potency, maya akarshani chadi hoya durbala, maya's potency becomes very, very weak. So then we come to the point of nishita bhajana kriya, where we become fixed in bhajan. And our consciousness becomes pervaded with spirituality, and the mundane influence becomes small. So when bhajana kriya, nishita bhajana kriya continues, one begins to meditate on the Lord, and there's only just a little bit of a fragrance left over of other topics. And then from that nishita bhajana kriya, we come to full-blown nishta. When we become fully fixed, these other topics, they become just like a shadow. Then we come to the point of ruchi, Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. When ruchi emerges, then the heart, we have some taste, and we become fully engrossed in spirituality. And the mundane influence becomes minimal. Our ahamta and mamata become minimal. When ruchi awakens, that meditation, there's no more ulterior subjects, and that meditation we have, that focus on the Lord, lasts for long periods of time. It's not just a question of initiation. It's a question of purification of the heart and going through the different stages of development. From ruchi, we come to a sakti. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that when a sakti becomes present, then spirituality becomes very intense, and the mundane influence is reduced just to very, very minor fragrance. And in this stage, meditation is very deep. From a sakti comes bhav. When bhav arises, the spirituality is overwhelming, and the mundane influence becomes like a little shadow, like a dream. And in bhav, there's more meditation, and the Lord sometimes appears in visions. And then when prema is born, that self-identification and possessiveness, they're most overwhelming, and they've lost all the relationship with the mundane aspect. And then prema, that stage, they also have some vision, but those visions become more detailed, and they have some true vision of the Lord. And Vishwanath describes how on the platform of prema, there's also mamata. There's ahamta and mamata, but that it's not mundane ahankara. The sense is there is that who am I belong to the Lord. I'm his servant, and that's fully conscious at that time. And the Lord, with his associates and his form and qualities, he's my worshipable person, he's the object of my service. That's his ahamta. And he considers that the Lord and the Lord's associates are his mamata. These are my possession. It's not just a question of this is where my affection lies, but mamata is an important thing. Mamata is a very deep attachment where you identify this person belongs to me. You may be in love with your boyfriend or your girlfriend, but when you get married, then there's a formal meditation. This is my wife. This is my husband. That's mamata. And then we have a child. This is my child. So when that turns, there's also ahankara there, but that ahankara is ahamta. That ahamta is I'm identifying myself as a servant of the Lord, and the mamata is I consider the Lord and his devotees to be my possession. So this is real chitta, as we were speaking about. Chitta has three elements according to the Patanjali Yoga Sutras, Bhagavad Bhamba Grahitvam. It has some reflective quality. And this is very big. Bimba means a reflection. When we are in association with devotees, with an advanced devotee, and we're following that person, we're trying to understand the heart of that person through the process of Nama-bhajan, then something of the quality of the chitta, the consciousness of that personality comes to us. So now, this is a lot to digest. I can stop there maybe. I want to go from here. I want to go on to discuss what the Patanjali Yoga Sutras say about distraction and inattention, and bring that to Hari Bhakti Vilas and Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teachings in Harinam Chintamani, and bring that to Siddha-pranali. It's a very, very scientific thing. But maybe we should stop here. I think this might be enough for everybody to digest today. We've discussed quite a few things. Does anybody have any reflections, comments, questions, objections, disagreements? Krishna consciousness is a great science, but it's all based on faith. We should have full faith, first of all, in Shastra. We meet a sadhu, and as we were speaking in our last session, there's three things which Narottam Das Thakur says, sadhu, shastra, guru, vakya, chittete, koriya, aikya. That these three things, chittete, koriya, aikya, I want to make my consciousness one with, and that's sadhu, shastra, and guru. And as we've commented, repeating Bhakti Begin Maharaj, those three things go in a sequence. First of all, we meet a sadhu. And sadhu, my Guru Maharaj gave a very simple definition of sadhu once. He said, sadhu is anyone who's more advanced than me. Well, there's a lot of sadhus out there then. For me, that's good news. I have a lot of people I can associate with. But what does sadhu do? Sadhu is someone who brings me to Shastra. It's not just that sadhu comes and says that I'm here, I belong to the society, I have a managerial position, I'm this or that, and you should listen to me. And they don't quote Shastra. We should understand Shastra. And from understanding that Shastra, our faith becomes stronger. Oh, it's not just a cult. following this person, but this is what Krishna says in the Gita. This is what our Acaryas say. And then we understand, oh, I need to have guru. I need to have someone who's realized. Orsi, did you want to share something?
Hare Krishna, yes. You mentioned that general devotee. Okay, you mentioned that we do not have full faith, and so why it is, why it happens?
Because our consciousness is still absorbed in ahankara. It's still absorbed in false ego. We have this ahamta and mamata, that we identify myself as this material body. I am a university professor. I am, an American or Hungarian. I'm this and that, and we identify with that was, and it may be a little weak because we understand that's not really true. But when we go to the supermarket, we still buy stuff that we like to eat. We're not just thinking about what the deity likes to eat. We're thinking about our own pleasure and things because we're identifying with this body. And as long as we're identifying with that body, then we have komala shraddha. We have weak faith. But when we develop shastriya shraddha, or faith in shastra by hearing from sadhu, then that becomes more fixed. It becomes stronger form of shraddha. And that ahamta and mamata, little by little, they become weaker and weaker. Is that helpful? Okay, thank you. Good to see you today. What is that a map behind? I thought it was a map. It's a picture. I'm sorry, it's a painting in your house.
Yes, it's a painting. It's my office in the university.
Okay. Before I saw it, I said, look, it looks like a map or something. It's not. Okay. Hare Krishna. And Leela Purushottam Prabhu, you want to share something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Yeah, I would like to ask you one thing, because we're speaking a lot about the adhikar for smaranam. We got a lot of informations, and even based on today's references, we could draw some conclusions, like that smaranam is really possible only with the purified chitta. And yeah, in the language of yoga sutras, it would be probably something like ekagrita samadhi, then when mind is able to really focus, and all these things. And then what I find myself maybe like hard to reconcile is that when we read Raghavat-candrika by Vishwanath Chakravarti, then he specifically mentions that the main anga of Raganuga sadhana is smaranam. That's how he presents it. And yet we still speak about sadhana, about the practicing part, meaning there is still some impurities in our mind, and there's still like we are not really fixed. And how these two statements goes together, like what is the form of smaranam that would be the prominent anga of because I'm more or less sure that that's the way the our friends from Babaji line, as you put it, that's for them it's the easiest shortcut. Like Raghavat-candrika says, the smaranam is the defining anga of Raganuga sadhana, of the practice of Raganuga. And so if we want to do it, if we want to practice that sadhana, we have to do smaranam in a way. Like that would be the conclusion from that statement. So if you could help me to approach that topic, how to think about it.
So first of all, we've kind of skirted around this a little bit, but to help you. But I think it was Jagadish Das Babaji, who's not exactly in our line. Some ISKCON devotees might get upset with me by quoting him, but he famously said that smarana means marana, that remembrance means death. So really the question it comes, we don't disagree. We also love Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur. We follow him. We adore his books. And Bhagavad-pranali is also a book that we should be studying too. And definitely this smarana is so important. But when does it come? And even Jagadish Das Babaji says that it comes after marana. So there's a beautiful prayer that I don't have it to be able to show you on the computer. Probably I have it somewhere, but I'm not exactly sure where. But I like very much to recite every day. If I can remember, he says it. Hey Dina Bandho, it's a prayer to Guru. Hey Dina Bandho, Karunaika Sindhu. My dear Guru Dev, you're Dina Bandhu, you're the friend of the fallen, that's me. Karunaika Sindhu, you're the ocean of mercy. Hey Dina Bandhu, Karunaika Sindhu. Oh,
That's
Krishna.
you have on the plate. That travels.
Yeah, Krishna Kun, what's the next line? Hey Dina Bandhu, Karunaika Sindhu.
Kuru prasadam mayi mandamudhe.
Kuru prasadam mayi mandamudhe. Thank you. Kuru prasadam mayi mandamudhe. That you please, Kuru prasadam, give me your mercy. Mayi mandamudhe. I'm in Maya mudha mate. My mind is just really dull and really bad. Kuru prasadam mayi mandamudhe. Lakshaparadhe bahupapagadhe. And I'm just always doing offenses. So within this verse, we find the qualities of sampratatmaka and dainyabodhika. There's surrender to Guru, and there's also dainyabodhika, some expression of humility with Guru. And within this verse, we find the lasamoyi. In the last line of the verse, he says that Kuru prasadam mayimanda mudhe lakshaparadhe bahupapagadhe tat pada padme stu matishta krishne. Tapadapamestu matis to Krishna. May I always remember your lotus feet and the lotus feet of Krishna. And this is Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, all three together again in this verse. Our Sambandha is with our Gurudev, he's our connection. Our Abhideya is doing bhajan of Krishna under the guidance of Gurudev, and our Prayojana is to remember Krishna. And that's what Raganuga Bhakti is all about. But it begins, where does it begin? We're saying, my understanding is that it begins with Guru. When I have this mamata toward my Gurudev and toward the Vaishnavas. And Jai Gourmet has made an interesting comment. Let's touch on that in this connection. He says, I especially like how you mentioned that one's sense of mamata becomes engaged toward the associates of Krishna, thinking that they are mine. This is very sweet. Well, it's not just the associates of Krishna, but the devotees. Even the devotees in this material world. Let me identify with them. But that mamata has to also come with a hamta. That what is my conception? Because if I can't just walk around that, oh, you guys all belong to me. You're all part of my WhatsApp group. I hear so many times devotees say things, senior devotees, it kind of makes me wince sometimes. Prabhupada said it sometimes to my Guru Maharaj, it's not always bad, but when I hear devotees say, my disciple, and my disciple this, and my disciple that, it makes me uncomfortable. It's like somebody saying, if you go to Boston in America or San Francisco in a social gathering and you start talking about my wife. Yeah, my wife told me this, and my wife said this, and my wife, and you don't say her name. She's just my wife. Then people become disturbed. What is this? She's a person. So mamata is actually a very advanced thing to think that this person belongs to me. But that comes after ahamta, when we shift our consciousness and we understand I'm a servant. And therefore, Rupa Goswami gives these three different levels of prayers. And it begins with Samprarthanatmaka, where our life and soul is engaged in this prayer, and we're doing Saranagati. We're surrendering to Krishna's devotee. So I like this prayer very much. If somebody reminds me, we can share this with you guys. This Hey Dina Bando Karunaika Sindo Karu Prasadam Moyi Mandamute. In this verse, I can see Sambandha Abhide and Prayojan. I can see all three different types of prayers. It's got it all. It's a prayer by it was written by one brahmachari disciple, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, who later took sannyas, and I don't remember his name. It's not somebody I ever had the good fortune to meet, but I really like the prayer. Great Siddhanta. Is that helpful? Leela Purushottam Prabhu?
Yeah, so
we agree. We agree that smarana is so important. But where does that smarana come from? And when we have the proper ahamta and mamata, then the smarana naturally comes. But otherwise, it's just artificial. It's just kalpana.
Yeah. That's the thing. That's the danger that we are discussing here for last few sessions.
Yeah, the word kalpana keeps coming up.
Is it still that we could accept it that although Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur states that the main anga of Raganuga sadhana is the smaranam, that because then when we try to come to a conclusion when we really get the adhikar for the smarana, it sounds to me like, if we would go by the terminology, like technically speaking, it's somewhere the asakti earliest, probably.
Yeah, Bhaktivinoda speaks like that
so
too.
is it really just like the last part of the sadhana section, according to Rupa Goswami's, like, how does he differentiate? Like Shraddha to Asakti is basically considered like the sadhana part, and then Bhava begins the sadhya, begins the achieving perfection. So in that sense, if we would ascribe smarana being possible only for the asakti, it would be just very last part of the sadhana part for our practice. I'm sorry to be so
No, that's brilliant. I love it. Thank you. I would just suggest that in our line, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur's commentary on the first verse of Shikshashtakam, he speaks about different types of Shraddha. Shraddha is the very first thing. And in that Shraddha, there's a seed, depending on where we're getting our Shraddha from. He says it may be Lokik Shraddha, common faith. Everybody says that XYZ person is a great devotee, so everybody says it, so it must be true. And just because everybody says it, they have faith. But we want to have Shastriya Shraddha. And a Shastriya Shraddha, Bhaktivinoda says, is two types. There's Shastra Avadharanamoyi Shraddha, which is faith which is only based on Shastra. And that faith is characterized by a sense of fear.
Yeah.
That I have to do this thing. I have to follow Varnashram Dharma. I have to, follow the authorities in the temple. Otherwise, I can't practice bhakti. Right? But the second type of faith is Bhagavat Lila Madhurja Lobhamoyi Shraddha, which Bhaktivinoda says the key word is lobha, or greed. And this is on the platform of Shraddha. So there's a seed there. And so Bhaktivinoda says, when someone hears Hari Katha, just like the first devotees in 26 Second Avenue, in the very, very first days, in 1967, 68, Srila Prabhupada is speaking to them about Radha Krishna and the gopis and Vrindavan and all these things. And excuse my American English, but what the hell do they know? All they know is their ice cream parlor next door with the eggs in it and smoking cigarettes afterwards, and probably still smoking some marijuana. And some of the guys had their boyfriends. And anyway, it's a whole thing. But Prabhupada was giving a seed of something, and that was a seed of Raganuga Bhakti. And therefore, just as Vishwanath says, I think it's in Bhajana-pranali, if I'm not mistaken, he says that what is a fire yagya? A fire yagya is when you have a fire and you pour ghee in the fire and you chant swaha, the name of Agni's wife, along with some mantra, and Agni's wife carries that offering to the deity that you're offering the oblation to. That's a fire yagya. Rasamrita Bindu, I think it's in the Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu by Vishwanath. So it's exactly what's that. And he says then that, but there's other activities which are not the fire yagya.
Yeah.
Cleaning the ground before, collecting firewood, putting the bricks out, and all these, that's not the fire yagya. But because there are things which lead to the fire yagya, there also can be called the fire yagya. So in that sense, we're all Raganuga Bhaktas, because we have the seed of Raganuga Bhakti, and because we're worshiping Radha Krishna, we're not worshiping Lakshmi Narayan. We're reading Srimad Bhagavatam. We're reading the commentary of Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. We're worshiping Tulsi Devi, et cetera, et cetera. But we don't have the qualification yet to really do smarana, where it comes, because smarana means marana. It means that I'm dead materially, and it's something which will arise by itself, that hasn't arisen naturally yet. So yeah, great questions.
It's very satisfying answer. This logic that you practice it much earlier, before it's actually like like full-fledged practice of with all the features that you still require to achieve the qualifications, the adhikar for, by the practice itself, actually, which is so nice on it, actually.
Well, I mean, we all know, maybe everybody here in this discussion's had some experience when you start reading Govinda Lilamrita, even Krishna book, or Krishna Bhavanamrita, you know, these books are so sweet. And we hear about the sweetness of Vrindavan, and it just melts your heart. It's just so wonderful. And then you read something Bhajana-pranali, and wow, Raganuga Bhakti. Yeah, I'm interested in that. And we mistake, we have a misunderstanding. We think that my interest in the subject matter equates my adhikar for it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't read those things or we shouldn't aspire for those things. And I'm not saying even that that's not part of the pathway. But if we start thinking, now I'm qualified to do Raganuga Bhakti because I like the stories in Govinda Lilamrita, and it makes me feel really happy and blissful. Therefore, I'm qualified to do Raganuga Bhakti. That may be kalpana. That this may be our imagination.
In that sense, it would definitely require, in my eyes, to really analyze, again, probably with the help of Ragavartma-candrika, because that's a big statement there, the role of the lobha in answering what is really the adhikar for Raganuga sadhana.
Well, let's look at the same source of Ragavartma-candrika, which is Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur, and let's look at see what he says in Madhurya Kadambini, which is where we went today. And then it gives a different perspective. It's not just that we throw away Madhurya Kadambini. That's a little depressing. I'm just going to go to Ragavartma-candrika. That's really encouraging. I like that better.
That's when one looks into Anishtita bhajana features described by Vishwanath in Madhurya Kadambini.
And Bhaktivinoda says such a powerful thing in this. There's a series of articles, which I'm not sure who made it into a book. Maybe it's Bhakti Pragyan Maharaj, because it was published by the Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, but in Bengali, it's called Bhakti Tattva Vivek, not Tattva Vivek. There's a separate book called Bhakti Tattva Vivek, which Bhanu Maharaj also nicely translated. And in the beginning of that book, he says, if we don't understand what is Bhakti Abhas, what is Shuddha Bhakti, then we may misunderstand and think, oh, I've been practicing Bhakti, I'm getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm chanting 16 rounds, I'm doing this and this and this, but I'm not getting a result. And we practice for some time, and even we may have some inspiration reading Govinda Lilamrita and this and that, and wow. And we may think about ourselves, we build a castle in the sky,
Yeah.
that I'm so advanced, I'm like this and that. And maybe we might even imitate the behavior, the bodily behavior of an advanced devotee, but we're not acting under the guidance of an advanced devotee. We're not actually practicing saranagati. We're not actually practicing Trinadapi Sunichena. Then it's all just kalpana, just some imagination. And then what happens, inevitably Bhaktivinoda says, is that at a certain point, Maya is going to come back and knock on the door. Hey, remember me? Oh yeah, I sure do remember you. And her face goes toward Maya again. Look what toy I've got for you. And then we think, oh, we become discouraged and we think bhakti doesn't work.
Yeah.
We think I was so advanced, I was practicing Raganuga Bhakti, reading Govinda Lilamrita, chanting 1.5, 2 lakhs a day, this and that, and it didn't work. So bhakti doesn't work.
Yeah.
If we don't understand this proper science of Madhurya Kadambini and what Yoga Sutras are saying, etc. And this is a problem, and it's not just a problem in ISKCON, it's a problem I see with so many Vaishnavas. We should understand Shastra. And even, we may not be on such a platform or whatever, but we should repeat Shastra. It's such a very, very important thing.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Baji. Gornitai Prabhu, do you have something you want to share?
Yes. Thank you very much. Recently, I was taking in classes of Bhakti Raghav Maharaj, and we were speaking about Narada Muni. That's the first example in Srimad Bhagavatam, and someone reached svarupa, someone reached perfection. And it's interesting how nicely Narada Muni going through his previous life. It's like a summary, whatever we are discussing now. And if you study deeply these verses, we can find the same points which you mentioned very nicely and elaborately. Like, what is the nature of Krishna? So Narada Muni, as a very sincere student, he learns everything. He gets every confidential knowledge from the sadhus. But then he goes to practice. And by practice, because he's very serious, immediately, when he starts to really meditate or smarana, meditate on the Lord, Krishna appears immediately. So we think, okay, that's a perfection. But Narada Muni says that no, that's not a perfection, because Krishna have a different goal by this appearance. And he mentioned that your lobha, your eagerness is not really the high level. So I disappear. And then explains that, okay, in this state of separation, you practice, and that will burn out all your material concepts, which naturally there. And also, you have to practice in a way which is not distracting you, building your ego. And Narada Muni mentioned that in the text 26, 2 qualities. One is the vimada, without being proud, and the other is the vimatsara, without being envious, which is quite the opposite or the similarity, like being danya, being little humble, and also not thinking anyone else. Of course, something which I have to, but Krishna didn't give me. I think that's one key when devotees thinking others have something which they didn't get on the proper way from Guru, from Mahamantra. And it's one key why they are going for someone else who practically doesn't know him, doesn't know them. They have a Guru, they have a cooperation for years. And one person is really, really full-heartedly want to help them, and then they go somewhere else. That's kind of envious. They think that they need something else from somewhere else. So that's one point which I wanted to mention, studying Narada Muni's example, which is like, again, a summary, but shows the key elements. I would like to hear your reflection, and then another point I would like to mention about the prachitas, how nicely they've got their perfection. So can you share something about this Narada Muni's example?
Yeah, so many times, as long as we're bahirmukh, we're external. As long as we're, in the language of my Guru Maharaj, we're anartha yukta vasta. We have anarthas in our heart. Then our darshan of Guru and Sadhu is bhogya darshan. Because our ahamta and our mamata are both very strong. And we identify with Gurudev. We have some ahamta, we have some mamata, but it's based on my body. My Guru, I think I understand my Gurudev in terms of my body. He's an old man. He's an Indian. He knows verses. And we see external things. And we're only attached because of that. And if we're not drinking deeply of the nectar of our Goswami's literature through the words of Gurudev, then we don't have Shastri Shraddha. It's not Dhrita Shraddha. It's not fixed, strong Shraddha. Rather, it's Komala Shraddha. It's a weak kind of faith. And then people leave. And they blame the Guru. They blame the leaders. They blame the institution. But why don't they say the real thing? I mean, was there something wrong with the Maha Mantra? That's my question. Was there something wrong with worshiping Radha Krishna? Is there something wrong with Srimad Bhagavatam? Is there something wrong with Prasadam? I've never heard anybody who's left. I have a few persons I know who left and gone to Babaji's and that, and they're my friends. I don't want to get into criticizing them. But why did they go? This question's come. It's not because the holy name is not sufficient. It's because I didn't get enough of a taste of it. And if they were really honest, I think they would have to say that, well, I didn't really practice completely. Because I'm a bahirmukh jana, I'm an external person, I just practiced what the institution was telling me to do. And I went to the Friday programs and the Thursday programs, and I went to the Mangal Artik, and I did 4 of these and 2 of these, and I followed all the numbers and things, and I had friends in the society. But after some time, I felt it's not working. But it's not just a matter of hanging out with people in a building on certain days of the week. We also have to practice these things. And at least even if we can't practice these things, then at least we should understand that I'm not practicing these things. At least we should understand what the standard is. And then I can understand, oh, it's because of my sickness that I'm not getting healed. It's not that there's no problem with the medicine. The medicine's good, but because I'm not a good patient, I'm not taking the medicine in the right way. That's the problem. And then we don't make offenses. I don't like, again, to try to judge devotees who went here or there. I'm not impressed with it. I know Vaishnavas at the Gambhira and at Tota Gopinath temple. I know Vaishnavas at Siddha-Bakul. I know Vaishnavas in Gaudiya Mat. I know Vaishnavas at Radhakund, Babaji's and that. I know so many different Vaishnavas, and they all say the same thing. Don't leave your Guru. Stay with your Guru. They all say that because that's our principle of bhakti. And they'll criticize that thing. So the people who I do see leaving and going here and there, it's not, I mean, sometimes maybe they may have a guru who's fallen down or who's addicted to sense gratification and is on the wrong path. That's another case. But just to say something about someone because they're very simple, you know, I started reading Bengali. And I started looking at the commentary of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta in Chaitanya Bhagavat. And I thought, wow, I'm going to get some really cool stuff here, you know? And I have to tell you, I was a little disappointed initially because I saw it was extremely simple. And without mentioning any names, I have some other commentaries on Chaitanya Bhagavat by some Vaishnavas who I don't think of as being on the same platform as our Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. But their commentaries, wow, they really have a lot more deeper substance in that way. So it was a bit of a quandary for me at first. And then I thought about it, no, that this is the nature of a qualified doctor, that they give the medicine which is appropriate for the particular patient. And we see Srila Prabhupada could have said so many things. If you read what Prabhupada writes in Nectar of Instruction, for example, he speaks about Siddha-pranali, and he speaks about Raganuga Bhakti, so many things. Prabhupada knew these things, but Prabhupada spoke in a very, very simple way. And in his purports, he wrote in a very simple way, and he even just repeated. Sometimes some scholars just go crazy when you study Prabhupada's books because it's not like sequential all the time. It's not building on something. He's just saying the same thing. It seems like over and over and over again. You're not your body, chant Hare Krishna. And he says it in different ways, and there's so many gems in the books, but it seems very repetitious because Prabhupada was empowered by Krishna to give a message to a certain class of people at a certain time. And just like you may have, I give this example sometimes, you may have a teacher in the university, in 10th grade in high school, who only has a bachelor's degree. And on the other hand, in 2nd grade, you may have a teacher who's a professor. But the teacher who's a professor in 2nd grade tells you, you cannot take a bigger number from a smaller number. Well, that's not true. You can, there's negative numbers. And he's a professor. And then you think, well, my teacher in 10th grade, he's more advanced than my 2nd grade teacher because my 10th grade teacher taught me about negative numbers. Well, you're wrong. The 2nd grade teacher actually knew more, but because he was very expert and he spoke exactly what was needed for those students, he told them you cannot take a bigger number from a smaller number because they can't wrap their head around it. They'll just get a big headache. But when they become more mature, then the teacher in 10th grade explains that to them. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the 10th grade teacher is less advanced. So in the same way, what Krishna has sent us Guru. Krishna's given us the holy name. If the Guru comes and tells us take LSD, eat meat or something, and we know there's something wrong, this guy's bogus. But if he's telling us to chant Hare Krishna, read Srimad Bhagavatam, worship Krishna, then he's okay. He's big advanced or small advanced. He's my guru. That's all that I need. But when people have some social considerations, they're bahir-mukjanas, they're external, then they're more absorbed in thinking what other people think of them. Oh, if I tell everybody I have an ISKCON guru, they're not going to respect me. But if I tell them I have a guru with a big beard from Gaudiya, from Radhakund or something, who knows Sanskrit, then the people are going to say, wow, you really went to a very advanced Vaishnava. And it's just an external thing. But where are you? And how deeply are you practicing? Is that helpful, Prabhuji?
Yeah, I remember that we started this in Bhakti-candrika with understanding Guru. And then you spoke a lot of things about Prabhupada's as a Acharya and how much endeavor we have to study Srila Prabhupada to understand Prabhupada. And then understand Prabhupada. If you understand Prabhupada, it's quite high level. And then we can understand the Guru who understands Prabhupada. So it's not so easy. So that is a little sequence. So understand the Guru, and then you can understand higher things. I see you have some sickness. You have to check.
I'm supposed to do this every day, and it's sitting right here right now. While we're talking, I'm just going to go ahead. Madhupati Prabhu got this toy from me, is this fancy thing, and told me I have to do it every day. And I have to confess, it's been probably 2 weeks since I did it. So I'm sitting here at the table. Please excuse me.
So I think that if we really study Prabhupada, and then we start to understand Prabhupada greatness, Prabhupada function as Acharya, as founder Acharya of ISKCON. And then we understand that then Prabhupada's disciples, some of them at least, understood him and gives the same knowledge, give the same feeling, give the same mood. Then we will not deviate. Then we will not run away, or will not become anxious. Oh, when I get it, when I get it. In time. It's very nice. May I mention these prachitas? Do you have time for them?
Sure, sure.
So somehow I studied the prachita's life, which I found very interesting, because it is the end of the fourth canto. And at the end of the fourth canto, really fixing our mind on pure devotion and give up all the mixed devotion. But this prachitas was not so special. So how they came to Krishna consciousness? They were just, of course, they were princes, but they didn't mention that they were full Krishna consciousness or something like that. They went just to have meditation, to prepare for the Grihastha life. And then Lord Shiva came and he was teaching them to Vishnu worship. You have time, you have time in your Gurukul or your Brahmachari life, so at least you will get a useful meditation, worship Lord Vishnu. So they were nice, they were humble, and they accepted that, and they practiced that. And then Lord Vishnu appeared to them, which I don't think many of us experience, that Lord Vishnu appears to us by some worship. That's maybe we are lower than the prachitas, but still they are not pure devotees. So Lord Vishnu appears to them, and because they remember what Lord Shiva was teaching them, they ask a benediction to get the pure bhakti. And the Lord says yes, but before that, you go live in a not material life, live a devotional life, live Grihastha life for maybe 1 million years, something quite long time. And then they live like that, live like sense gratification. They live like any kings, But by the mercy, the second mercy, or the third mercy, first mercy is when Lord Shiva appears to them. They didn't ask anyone to come to them. Lord Shiva came. That's the first mercy of the Lord for them. And then Lord Vishnu appears. They are not ready for that, but still Lord Vishnu appears. And then when the time is ready, Lord Vishnu make them remember that, okay, you have a desire. No, it's the time to go out from this material life and practice that. But unfortunately, they've got a spiritual master who was a Jayanti or Jayan, I don't remember the name, but it's a Mukti teacher. And they started to learn the yoga meditation, mystical yoga meditation for Mukti. And it was not the blessing of the Lord, but then Narada Muni came as the next blessing. So Krishna sent again someone to help them. And then Narada Muni was teaching them the perfect science. And he mentioned to them that, yes, maybe you think you are practicing spiritual life, but until you are not focusing on pure devotional service. And what does it mean? Understand the relationship between the Lord and the pure devotees. The Lord who is under the will of devotees. So it's very interesting how the Prachitas got the ultimate teachings from Lord Narada Muni. And that's maybe for us also, to get again the mercy of Guru, mercy of Krishna in a different crossways of our life. So that's I wanted to offer.
Well, first of all, let me just give a little advertisement here, I guess you might call it. I gave a class recently in New Brajadam about the prachetas, which you might find interesting, and we discuss it much more elaborately than I'm going to be able to do right now, some of these principles. And we compared the prachetas and their particular prayer. I think it's in the 36th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, of the anyway, it's toward the end of the 4th canto, where they're saying, family life is Maya, and my dear Lord, please take this away from it. And we compared that to the Brijbasis, who Grihastas, and we compared that to what Brihad Bhagavatamrita says about Hanuman and Narad Muni in their conversation about the Pandavas and Yudhishthira. And we went through some different commentaries of Vishwanath and others where Vishwanath explains that the prachetas were karma mishra bhaktas. And they were attached to the Paramatma feature of the Lord. But they had some good fortune, but their meditation on the Lord was, they were meditating on the Paramatma. But where did their good fortune come from is by associating with devotees. And in the, I guess maybe in the 3rd canto, there's a verse about the prachetas, how the Lord says, I'm very pleased with you. Krishna Kun might remember the number of the verse. I'm very pleased with you because you come together, you have friendship amongst yourselves. And because you have this friendship, and then I'm appearing before you. And when the prachetas requested a boon, a benediction from the Lord, they spoke this verse, which appears, I think the exact same verse appears twice in the Bhagavatam, and like 60 or 80% of the verse appears 3 or 4 times. They said, Tulayama Lavena Pi Naswagam Na Punarbhavam Bhagavat Sangi Sangasham Martyanam Kimutasi Saha. That what we want, we don't care about Naswargam Na Punarbhavam, whether we take birth again, we don't care about we have to go to hell, we don't care about anything. What we want, the greatest thing is Bhagavat Sangi Sangasha. We want association with your devotees. So it's clear to me that the prachetas, and it's a great example, the prachetas weren't such elevated persons. They weren't hearing about Braj Bhakti. They were Karma Mishra Bhaktas. They were, their Ishtadev was the Paramatma in the heart. But still they got so much mercy because they loved each other, because they associated with each other in the mood of friendship. And that's so pleasing to the Lord that they got such benedictions. Is that helpful, Prabhuji? That's what comes to my mind.
Very nice. Very nice that their nature to love each other is like a doorway for the mercy of the Lord. Yeah, very nice. Yeah. Thank you.
Very important thing. Thank you, Prabhuji. There's a number of different comments here. Tirthakar Prabhu had to leave. Krishna Kund wrote me, and there's some question from me from Krishna Balaram Prabhu. I guess this is Krishna Balaram from South Africa. He says, obeisances, Jai Prabhupada. Thank you for the class. A few questions. You mentioned one way that our Siddha-pranali is awakened is at Bhav. Does that mean it's lying dormant? Please clarify. Well, oh my God, there's so many quarrels about this thing. But to me, it's just like 2 little boys who they haven't really learned to read yet properly. They don't have any vocabulary, but they understand what a plus sign means and the letters of the alphabet. And they see their big brother's book, who's a sophomore in the university, and they open their big brother's book and they see the letter M. What is it? Oh, I can't even remember it now. They see some formula from Einstein or something, MC squared. They see that thing, M and a C and a little 2. And then they start talking about what that means, and they get in a big argument. What MC squared means. They can't understand it. And so in the same way, on this subject matter, there's so many devotees who get in quarrels about it. And I just think this is the most ridiculous thing in the world to fight about. I understand what is my sambandha is going to be with Guru. I understand What is abhideya? What is the process to realize my svarupa? That's chanting Hare Krishna, following his process. What the prayojan is, what my siddha-deha is, I'm not really sure. And so his question is that we're mentioning as Siddha-pranali is awakened at bhav. Does it mean that it's lying dormant? So there's a big argument about this right now. Amongst devotees, to be really frank, I think that they don't really have anything better to do than to quarrel. It doesn't really matter to me. Let me give you an example that I thought of. If you have a baby lion and you separate the lion cub, away from its mother at the time of birth, and you give it some goat milk or cow milk or something, and the baby lion grows up, and you put the baby lion in a field with a bunch of sheep, S-H-E-E-P, sheep, those creatures on four legs with a lot of fur. The baby lion will grow up thinking that it's a sheep. And it may even try eating grass, but it'll never be satisfied with the grass. Now, the baby lion has never tasted flesh. It's grown up eating grass, thinking I'm a sheep. But you can correctly say that the baby lion is a meat eater because that's its intrinsic quality. So whether or not our svarupa is something which is just like laying dormant and we're just going to wake it up and go along with it, or if it's something which we develop, it's really not so important to me. I'd like to realize it, that this theoretical understanding about it, I don't consider to be very important. So then he mentions number 2, I like the process you mentioned, and I really like Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur's Madhurya Kadambini, I guess because of the process. Question, how does it work with kripa? You might have already addressed this in previous classes, so apologies. Well, Tate Krishna Bhaja Kori Guru Sevan, probably one of the verses I quote the most. Our bhajan, our Krishna bhajan is my Guru Seva. And what is the necessity of having Guru if we just say Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam? What is the necessity of accepting Guru? I can just worship, I can just chant Hare Krishna. What is the necessity of that? We might think in that way. But we should understand that Krishna Kripa Srimurti is Gurudev. Krishna gives his mercy through the medium of Guru. But how do we get Gurudev's mercy? It's not just by jumping up and down and shouting Srila Gurudev Ki Jai and wearing a t-shirt with his picture on it and showing what a fanatic that I am. That's for neophytes. But by melting the heart of an advanced Vaishnava, by pleasing Gurudev, and what pleases Gurudev the most, some people say it's money. Other people say it's how many buildings you purchase. Other people say it's how well you follow the institutional leaders. But that's all ridiculous. Then it means that Gurudev is just a mundane person. We should do all those things, but we do them out of love. We want to give money to Gurudev. We want to build buildings. We want to cooperate, but we do it out of love. And what pleases Gurudev the most is when we chant Hare Krishna, because Gurudev is that person who's attached to Krishna, and he sees that Krishna, chanting the holy name, is going to solve all the problems. That's the real process. So he's not, he sees, okay, they're so attached. They're thinking that we're going to take some classes in counseling. We're going to practice active listening. And those are all good things. Not that they're bad things. But Gurudev sees, why are they doing that thing? They should chant Hare Krishna. If you chant Hare Krishna really sincerely, then you'll get all the benefits of taking a class and active listening. Or maybe you'll get some inspiration from the chanting that I should take some active listening class so that I can preach in a way like that. So that kripa is always there. It's very, very important. And he has a third question. I've heard that as long as we're chanting, we will in our next life appear in Krishna Leela somewhere in the universe before we go back home. I've seen some devotee who this was told to be very attentive in their chanting. I saw some devotees who this was told to be very inattentive in their chanting. I know I might process focus on this, but please remove the small itch I have. Okay, I think that's a little confusing to me, what is written, but I think Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Gita Mala, he speaks about this thing, that if we're chanting nicely, if we get the mercy of Guru, we leave our body in Vrindavan, and we will go, we get some perfection, even you get Krishna Prem. You'll take birth in Boma Leela, somewhere in some universe where Krishna is taking part in his pastimes, and we'll take birth in the family of gopis, or if we're in Braj Leela, and we'll have a particular husband, this and that, and we'll hear the sound of Krishna's flute, perhaps. We'll hear something about Krishna, we'll be attracted to Krishna, maybe we'll even get to see Krishna briefly, and we'll go for that. And that's the beginning, in one sense, of our perfection, that at that point, we're going to begin to develop our qualities for Krishna, because we can't just go from, we're coming out of prison, and all that we've learned in prison is how to play cards and cheat and gamble and take drugs and things, and now I'm going to go from prison to the spiritual world. There's an interim kind of thing, which is there. So you're mentioning, you see some devotees who this was told to become very inattentive in their chanting. So in the next session, I want to speak something about attentiveness, and for my own benefit, because this is my disease, attentiveness and how this works according to the Yoga Sutras, according to Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and how this fits in with all this discussion about ahankara, about the holy name, about a connection with Gurudev. All of these fit together like pieces of a puzzle. And if we don't understand each aspect of it and their connection with each other, then we may lose faith and think that, oh, there's no Siddha-pranali here, I'm not going to get the real thing. And there's a comment, if we're not practicing Saranagati and Trinadapi Sanichana, then it's not real in Raganuga, and Maya will come. That's right. Well, that's a good point. So Krishna Balaram Prabhu, for those of you who don't know, I guess he's listening online. I'm not sure if he's here in a Zoom session. He must be online. Krishna Balaram Prabhu is a very, very sweet devotee from South Africa.
He's on YouTube.
He's on YouTube. Okay. Thank you, Krishna Kun. Also, I hope that answers your question, Krishna Balaram Prabhu. Purushottam Prabhu 438 Varam Vinidam. Oh, that's the verse about how the Lord is pleased with the Prachetas. Yes, because they were friends with each other. I love that. Such an important thing. Ujjwala Rasagya, we miss your association. Ujjwala used to be so much more active, and we're not getting her wisdom and input anymore. She's busy, and our times are not the same. Okay, that's great. Anybody else with anything? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and wind up right now. Okay, thank you all so much. So in our next session, I think we have at least probably 2 more sessions. What I'd like to do is to tell you what's going to happen. I want to speak about the connection about inattentiveness, and why Bhaktivinoda says that that's the root of all different anarthas, and what is the connection with that and Siddha-pranali, and Trinadapi Sanichana is our Siddha-pranali mantra. And then probably I want to have another session where we just kind of try to go over everything very briefly and just give an overview for everything again. So that's our thoughts. Okay, thank you all so much. It's really good to see everybody here. I wish I could be physically with everyone. Gauri Thai Prabhu, they're waiting for you. You coming for the Shringa Chaturdasi and your Guru Maharaj's Vyas Puja?
As I told you, I have to stay.
Oh, okay. I won't torture you anymore. Tell you how the cows are crying and separation from you and that.
Sorry. But it's very kind you mentioned it. It's touching my heart. Thank you.
A friend of mine who takes care of the cows, Braja Sevika in Vrindavan, she's just telling me how the cows are so simple and they're so affectionate, and they really develop a connection, but they really need constant attention, as you know. Somebody has to be with them there every day. It's not like having a dog or a cat. You can just like feed them once a day and that's it. But having a cow is a serious thing. You got to really give time and care for them. Okay, that's why Leela Purushottam Prabhu doesn't have a dozen cows too, right? We spoke about this many times. He's got a big enough yard for it, but some wise wisdom there too.
One would
All right.
fit me.
Well, you had a friend who had one, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful cow too. I remember that beautiful white cow. She was so beautiful.
Yeah. It was a little crazy. It was difficult to deal with, but
Yeah, I mean, we just think it's like having a dog or a cat or something, it's just like having a pet. It's kind of cool. It's Vedic, and I've got some grass here for it, and I'll just take care. And then we don't think of it, what if I want to go to Mayapur? What if I want to go here or there? What if I just want to go to the next city and go to a festival for the whole day? I can't
exactly.
even do that. There's got to be somebody there with a cow all day long. And around, it's really important. Okay. Thank you all so much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srila Narottam Das Thakur Mahashoy ki jai, Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu